Hello, I hadn't made a video for a little while, but I've been thinking of a few, and one I wanted to do was I learned a little something new about how to deal with backlash when I'm guiding, in particular in declination. So I've already got a guide star selected and looping, and when I hit guide down here, it should start calibrating. And if this drags on too much, I might pause or speed it up a tiny bit. But that should do that in a minute or two. And actually, I'd already done this earlier tonight, so I know my polar alignment is what I call reasonably close. It was, I think it was within 5 or 6 arc seconds. And I was pretty happy with that. I've had it every now and then. I'd get lucky and get it to where it's like within 1 or 2. And I noticed when it's that good, the declination, it's kind of like, it was so close, it was hard for it to make corrections. It would bump a little north, bump a little south. And on this mount, I've got a Celestron AVX. It's pretty typical, like a lot of mounts. It's got a lot of backlash in the declination. And I think it can take 11 or 12 seconds to correct that, which is a real pain. So what I'm going to do here, first I'm going to set, now it is, okay, I had it, my declination on north only, and it is making a correction over here. But sometimes it's the other way. What I'm doing, what I've learned is you can set it on north only or south only and try to avoid the backlash, because every time you switch directions you go through that. Now I've got this set, my deck aggression really low. It's on 25 because I was doing that to try to avoid going too far. I'm going to crank it up to 100 to get it to go faster. And also I'm going to check my minimum move down. When I did my stuff before, it said to go around 0.17. This minimum move, the lower the number is, the smaller the error that it decides to make a correction on. So there, now that's starting to pop up, and it's going to go too far. I'll just go ahead and let it go too far just for this here. So what'll happen, it'll go up here above it, and if I've got it on, if it goes above center, if it gets way up there, it's on north only, it's like, uh-oh, it can't correct, it can't go back south. But if you have it on auto, it'll start making changes here to the downwards. But anyway, what I've learned, when I first set it up, I'll set the declination on off and then just watch it for a few minutes and see if it starts erroring to the north or the south. And then hopefully the idea is I'll know which way to go. So I'm going to go ahead and set it on off, and I'm going to actually start over on that part. I'm going to go through the tool there, the guide assistant too, in case you haven't seen it. I think I've shown it, but I'll hit stop. So I'm still tracking. I'm just not making any corrections. And let's see. I think to do the guide assistant, I'm going to have, so I'll go down here to guiding assistant. And I'm going to tell it not to measure backlash. And start is grayed out because I'm not actually guiding yet. So I'll click the guiding button. And now it'll let me press start. And if you read up here, it's telling you that the output's disabled and that they're only measuring the errors. And then it says click stop after 2 minutes, or you can go longer if you want to see how accurate your mount is. I've learned it doesn't want to let you stop before the 2 minutes, which it's counting here on elapsed time. So we need 120 seconds. And I'm doing this on my exposure to half a second, so it makes corrections more often. So I've noticed, if I'm doing the shorter exposures, it seems to correct my problem quicker. So I kind of like that, but this thing here, when it finishes, it's going to tell me, it's going to recommend between 1 second and 3 seconds. I've tried that before. Maybe it's just something with this mount, I don't know. The idea, the reason that they're saying it is if you're making corrections really often, like if you've got it on a half a second or a tenth of a second or a quarter second or whatever, you're actually fighting the seeing of your sky, because the star, it's kind of twinkling and it's changing shape a little bit. And if you have this view here, of which I'm trying to remember how I did that, but you can actually see a live view of the star, and you'll see it kind of pulsating and changing size and stuff. And plus you'll notice down here on the bottom, your SNR, the signal noise ratio of the star, which I don't know why mine's got such a high number. It never used to. I don't know if something might changed. It's just giving me a different number. Okay, I've gone over 2 minutes. So I'll hit stop. And if I had this measure declination backlash checked, it would go through a bunch of checking north and south. And in my case, it usually errors out. Now here, my polar alignment error, surprisingly close. It's even closer than I thought. This is saying 1.8 arc minutes. I thought it was a little higher than that, but I checked that a few hours ago, and well, it's almost 2:30 in the morning. It's possible that the skies calmed down more, because I think I started around 11, so that was a couple hours after sunset. So you figure the sun being gone longer, it's kind of stabilized. There was still a little heat up there, and it was kind of balancing out. But I got kind of lucky hitting that, because I just did it with my polar alignment scope and eyeballed it, and it not bad. But sometimes I'll do that, and it'll be 25 of them or something. I'll have to make some adjustments. But the way I've got it set, I've got it shown in another video. I usually use an angle finder, a digital angle finder, to set my altitude for my latitude, because I'm at like 39.3 degrees here in Terre Haute, Indiana. And so I get that as close as I can that way, and then hopefully all I got to do is make adjustments east and west. So anyway, here it's telling me keep my exposure times into 1 to 3 seconds. Like I say, I kind of like them short, but some people swear by the longer ones, so I guess whatever works for you. So then it's telling me for my minimum move, it's suggesting 0.1 for RA, the east-west. And for my north-south declination, 0.15. So what's that? If you're not familiar with that, what that's doing is it's measuring the amount of error. So the smaller the number, the more corrections it tries to make. If it's correcting too often and messing you up, you could increase this number from 10 to 0.15 or 0.2 or whatever. And that's what tonight, that's what I was doing. I was bouncing it up and down. I was changing it on let's see, on my deck aggression right now. I've got it on off, so I'm guiding. So the red line here, it's hanging in there pretty good. And in some ways you'd think I could almost just leave it off, but eventually it is going to start going. So I've got a little, like 1.8 arc minute error, but is that error going to make the declination drift north or south? And it looks like it's creeping downwards, but I've found that it's so tight that it's possible to overcorrect it. So if I turn this on, telling it to guide to the north, like it says up here to move it up, if I had it on 100% deck aggression, which is what I used to always use, and I used to always have this on automatic, which means it would decide whether you need to go north or south, and it would change it all the time. You know, it'd say, oh, well, you've drifted down here, you need to move north, and then it'd overcorrect, and it'd say you need to move south. And then that's when I would have the issue with it's making all these corrections, and it's backlash, so it's making like 12 seconds worth of corrections, which in the real world here takes even longer. You know, it might take a minute or something. It takes a long time, and then it finally starts moving, and the red line will dive way low. But so I've learned to try to, when I first start, see which way it's doing it, and it's best to do this, I think. Do it when you move to your target. Like right now, I'm pointed almost due south, and at the equator or close to it. I'm pointed a few degrees above the equator, and then I pointed like 10 degrees to the east of south. I'll bring up, let's see here, this is in Carte du Ciel. Okay, so here on my azimuth it says I've still got almost 4 degrees before I cross the meridian, and I'm pointing due south. So I was trying to stay on one side because I'm not going to do a meridian flip. And then on my declination I've got it 5 degrees to the north of it, which was mainly just finding a good star and also keeping it away from the trees that I have down there to the south. Let's see if we can get back to PHD. But see, when sometimes you find out too, because of just the way your telescope's balanced, if it's not perfect, you might have it to where when you point it south and at the equator, it may tell you that your polar alignment, like in my case, say 1.8 or whatever it was arc minutes, and then let's say I move to a target somewhere in another portion of the sky. If the balance of my telescope and the counterweights in east and west and north and south are slightly off, it may make that polar alignment error slightly different. But anyway, while I'm pointing here, so let's say I feel confident that my corrections need to be north. So I'm going to turn this part here on, so that's north only. And then down here, I'm going to start seeing it make north corrections. It's got the up arrow. And since I've got it on 100% aggression, which means it's going to try to make 100% correction of whatever this is. Like if it says it's moving 0.4 of a pixel and for like 19-20 milliseconds or whatever, it'll do that much. If that ends up being too much, you can reduce the aggression. If you cut it in half, then it should be cutting in half the way it reacts. So what I do when I start off, I'll get it to where it starts to make the correction, and then I'm going to jump this baby way back. So I'm dropping my aggression way down. I've dropped it way down there to 0 because I held it down. Let's say I set it on 25 or something. And you learn this by experimenting with it. So now it's making smaller ones, and it's going to take it longer before it overcorrects. And I can do the same thing with my minimum move. After, through experience of the evening just watching it, I started noticing overcorrections, and every now and then it'd get a little high and I'd move it back to where I'd say move south. Instead of letting it do auto, I was just kind of learning what I wanted it to be. I was the automatic. So what I would do is I would increase this. I might take it up to 20 or 25, and I started to kind of find a sweet spot for what it felt like. And my guiding got really good. I was guiding, like right now it says it's at 1.109 or whatever, 1.1 arc seconds of error total. For a little while I had it down to like 0.7, something like that, but it didn't stay there all the time. You know, and part of that's just the sky. As you can see here, I'm getting it to center in. And if I see it starting to creep up and I think, oh, I'm getting too much, if I want to avoid having the overcorrection, I can come over here and say, okay, I don't want to start moving south yet, but maybe I would dump my aggression down to 20, or maybe I would just make this number bigger. You can kind of do either or. You know, usually they tell you just to change one variable at a time. But I've found sometimes it's like this here, whatever you have it on, it's going to make a correction every time it sees this number. If you decide it's doing too much, you can raise this one up instead. You can just kind of play with it and say, okay, well, it's not going to make any correction until the error gets bigger. Then eventually, if it drifts up too high, I would just change it to south only, or I turned it off a few times. I got it to where it was looking nice, and you know, it was kind of like a learning experience. I'd say, okay, it's doing nice. I'll turn it off for a while, and it's really helped my guiding over when I just left it on auto, because that was the standard thing. That was the default. When I'd start doing it, it would be on automatic, which is nice, user-friendly, and the deck aggression would be on 100. And whatever move, you know, was whatever the guiding assistant told it to do. And I didn't understand a lot of it. And I, just from getting on Facebook groups and stuff, see, so now it's starting to get up here a little bit. But it shouldn't, it's not making any corrections. But it can't correct back to the south right at the minute because I've got it pointing north. Now eventually, since remember when I had it off before, it started drifting south. So it could correct itself. It's just a matter of how patient do I want to be. You know, if I start seeing it up here, or maybe I think, well, I'm going to just fix it myself. You know, so then when I start doing, like I say, you know, it goes through the backlash, and then as soon as I see it starting to do something, I might turn it off. But anyway, I just thought I'd kind of share that for people that are trying to improve your guiding. You know, obviously you want to try to keep it as close to this center line as you can. So right now mine, I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go back south. I want to get it to correct back there, and it's starting to move already. It's making a little, when I say starting to move, it's trying to move. It moved for, what, 10 milliseconds there, 4 milliseconds. So that's like a millisecond's a thousandth of a second. So 4 of them, we divide it by 4. That's 1/250th of a second that it bumped the motor to the south. And if it takes 11 or 12 seconds of corrections to get rid of the backlash, that could take quite a while. And if you don't understand what's going on, it can kind of drive you nuts. But I could, since I want to get it to move, I can go ahead and take this down. I'll say I'll take it down to 10, or if I'm impatient, say I'll take it down to 0.05. It's going to start making corrections more often. But of course, right now it's kind of corrected itself. It's straddling the center line again. So I think I'm just going to turn it off. As long as I'm watching it. So, you know, in a perfect world, if your mount doesn't have any backlash, you could just leave this on auto, or if your polar alignment's dead on, maybe you'd just turn it off. But most of us need to have some correction, because I don't have a permanent setup. I set up on a tripod in my driveway every night when I come out. But anyway, hopefully this helps you out if you're trying to figure out any guiding issues.